probably up until the last, probably even 20 years, most people would think that their emotional state is intrinsic to them. It's within their own body boundary, if you want to call it that. Okay, so if I feel a certain way, it's because I feel a certain way and something's happened to me. And most of the sort of neurobiological study was about, you know, what's going on in this person. What's happened in the last 20 years or so is that we've got a much better sense of how emotional contagion works with humans, because we found the thing that does it. Because we like to know what's the bit of the body that does these different things. And the most important bit of the brain that mediates your social emotions is a thing called your mirror neurons, which are in your frontal cortex. And depending on how you were brought up, you might either have lots or not very many. So the most extreme case of lacking mirror neurons is found in autism. So people who have autism or who are somewhere along the autistic spectrum, their mirror neurons either are not there or they don't fire very well. And what my mirror neurons do is when I'm looking around at the group, I'm picking up very, very subtle social signals about how you might be feeling. Okay? And I'm doing that completely out with my consciousness. My mirror neurons are basically mirroring in my head the things that I'm noticing. Okay, so if I see an audience that's tapping around and moving a lot, my mirror neurons go, oh, okay, what's that about? They might not make me do it, but they'll be triggering in my mind and I'll be experiencing some sort of anxiety or agitation. If I see an audience that's gone to sleep because it's just had its lunch and is barely managing to keep awake, then my mirror neurons make me a bit kind of lower key. So this is the yawn response. Or the giggle response, you know, when somebody starts giggling in an audience and other people can't stop themselves. It's not really mediated through your hearing, it's your visual sense of what's going on, your mirror neurons kicking off. Okay. And these are very specific, so you have specific mirror neurons for particular emotions. Now the importance of this is when you're in an organisation, therefore, emotional states are catching. They are very catching. They're more catching than thoughts or language. So if you go into a room and a couple of people in the room are anxious, that will very quickly roll through the room, particularly if those people are high status people. So the more high status someone is, the more contagious their emotions are, because people look to them for cues. If you're not very high in the status system, people don't look to you for cues. You have to kind of mirror the more high status people. You may not know you're doing this, you probably don't know you're doing this, you probably don't know that other people are doing it around you. But this is a really important part of leadership, because the more senior you are, the higher rank you are in a system, the more your moods affect your people. So you sometimes go into organisations and the boss goes, I don't know why everybody around here is so irritable about everything.
We do.
Why is everybody so critical? I don't know, everybody just seems so depressed. No, people are mirroring what they're seeing in the person or the people at the top. Which is why conflict in a senior team will very often just get paralleled down between their teams, because they're reading conflict signals. Okay. This is where the performance of our art of leadership becomes quite important, and managing your own emotional states becomes, you start to realise that you become this very important trigger in your organisation. So it's making sense to people. So quite often you will see that an organisation has a culture that mirrors the personality of a boss. And it's often more precise than people would like to think, that mirroring. Okay?
There's also a point there, you know, for the consultants, internal, external consultants in the room, that's also really important when you're going in to run a group. The state in which you can bring yourself to that group will set the tone subconsciously, beyond consciously, for how people like to respond. So it's important to be able to.
There's also something important here about being able to acknowledge your own emotional state. So a leader that can say, I'm really upset that we've got to let 200 people go, I'm really sad about it, you know, it's awful, is much less likely to kick off a responding grief response, because people feel that the thing has been voiced. Yeah. So if something can be voiced, it doesn't have to be acted through in the same way. So your ability to say your emotions becomes quite important as you get more senior.